Let's review what we discussed last week, and just so you have it in video form to study. When you have a right triangle, you know one angle is a right angle, and you know the side opposite that right angle is the hypotenuse. Does not matter what you call the other sides. Call it A, call it B, call it X, call it Y, call it smiley face, call it C, call it whatever. The Pythagorean Theorem says whatever this side is squared plus whatever this side is squared equals the hypotenuse squared. And remember, we got caught in that trick on some of the worksheets last week because we just plugged in to this formula a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Without thinking, a lot of students plugged in for a and b, the two sides they had, even though one of the sides they had was the hypotenuse, which needs to be over here by itself. So, another way to write the Pythagorean theorem for the triangle we have written. X squared plus y squared equals the hypotenuse squared. Good? I can't stress enough the importance of just being able to find a missing side of a right triangle using the Pythagorean theorem. Let's do a practice problem. Let's do a hard one to start with. If I told you you had a right triangle and I said that the hypotenuse had a length of 15 and this side here was 9. This is actually going to be pretty easy, but we'll do it anyway. What you need to make sure you do is label the side you don't know with some variable that you like. I'm going to use smiley face, one of my favorite variables. And then what I know is that 9 squared plus smiley face squared equals 15 squared. So, what you have to do in a problem like this is make sure that the 15, which is the hypotenuse, is used in the Pythagorean theorem by itself on the side of the equal sign. So whatever two things are being added up have to be the two smallest sides of the right triangle. The hypotenuse has to be over here by itself. At this point, it's just an algebra equation. Square 9 and you get 81. We don't know what smiley face is, so we just leave it as smiley face squared. Square 15 and get 225. We then subtract 81 from both sides. Subtract 81 from both sides. Get smiley face squared is equal to 144. Now, take the square root of both sides. The square root of something squared is just that thing. That's why we want to use the square root. It undoes the squaring. They're inverse operations like we've talked about before. And then the square root of 144 we know is 12. And there we go. Now if you were listening at the beginning of the problem, I said it'd be kind of easy because you may have heard of Pythagorean triples before. 3, 4, 5 is a very popular one, and any multiple of 3, 4, 5 also works. So when I said 15 and then I put a 9 here, I had done 3 times 5 and 3 times 3, so I knew this had to be 4 times 3. And for those of you that like shortcuts, if you wrote that the answer to this was 12 because you knew it was a multiple of a 3, 4, 5, I would give you full credit for that. You wouldn't have to show all of this work. But you'd have to write, 9 times 3, 3 times 3 is 9, 5 times 3 is 15. So I know the missing side has to equal 4 times 3, which is 12. So you got to write a little bit, but you don't have to show all the work over here. If you're watching this video, it's because you want to review, so I'm going to give you a practice problem. After I write the problem on the slide, I want you to pause the video and then try this problem out yourself. So let's go with a green marker here and let's try this problem. You got a right triangle. The right angle is here. I'm going to tell you this side is 18 and this side is 11, and I want you to find this side, x. Pause the video now. I hope you started this problem by just recognizing that 18 is the hypotenuse. So you would start with something like x squared plus 11 squared equals 18 squared. And now we just start doing algebra. Nothing to do with x squared. We just leave it as x squared because we don't know what x is. 11 squared is 121. Oh, excuse me, this should be a plus. X squared plus 121. And then that equals 18 squared, which is 324. Subtract 121 from both sides. You get x squared is equal to 203. Take the square root of both sides, and you get x is equal to the square root of 203. Now 203 is not an even number, so you don't have to worry about does 4 go into it. It's not a real nice number in the first place, but I'm just going to check a few things. I think 7 goes into it. Let's see, 203 divided by 7. 2, and that's a 14, and then, yep, 63. So 2 goes into it 7 goes into it 29 times. So the square root of 203 is the same as the square root of 7 times 29. Now, 7 is a prime number, so the square root of it's not nice, and 29 is a prime number, so the square root of it's not nice. So there's your final answer. The square root of 203. That's the most exact answer. If you wanted a rounded approximation, you would use your calculator and you would find out that this is about 14.248. I'm using a calculator. Don't think I can just do that in my head. Good? And that would be units. Whatever the 11 and 18 are measured in, x would be measured in the same. I like doing this on the calculator at this point just to make sure, yeah, my answer makes sense. You know, it's smaller than 18.